Am I officially a Sanderson fan? Today we're discussing part 3 from Words of Radiance. Or maybe just half. You guys, this section is huge. I think it's double the size of all the other sections. So we're gonna see how far I get. Hi, I'm Allie. I am a daydreamer of love-earned stories, and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, you can also check out my Words of Radiance part 1, part 2. I can find them both in the description below, and there are extended cuts of both of those. What that means is that I talk about more things from each of those sections in the book. So if you want more Words of Radiance, you can go ahead and sign up on my Patreon. That's the best way to support my channel. You can do that over at the $5 tier. Link is in the description below. All right, now on to Words of Radiance 101. Let's begin. So this section was called Deadly, which now that I'm thinking about it, there are a lot of really intense moments that happen in this section. As I was reading it, I was just stressing out so much, especially those last 4 chapters. They are absolutely insane. But before we get to those, we have to cover everything. I'm happy that we're now really starting to see Shallan come into her own. That's what I was hoping would happen, especially after she finally she rid herself of Tin. And one of my favorite moments is how she sketched herself out right as she was arriving to the Shattered Plains before she was gonna go meet Dalinar and King Elokar. It was almost like an affirmation for herself. And I just thought it was really cool and really poetic that Sanderson did this to really help Shallan. You know, it's kind of like when you're about to go into a meeting and they always say like, do the Superman pose. Like, it's kind of crazy how much like little things can help change our mindset in life. This is what I would have been, Shallan thought, if I had not been raised in a household of fear. So this is what I will be today. I just feel like that quote is so real. Like anything you've ever grown up with in life, and as adults, we start to discover things that have happened to us and just kind of really trying to process and like learn to heal ourselves and take care of ourselves again. And we know that Shallan grew up in probably one of the most traumatic households. Her dad is so terrifying, and it breaks my heart everything that she's gone through. And the fact that she has now acknowledged, had I not grown up in a household of fear, I would be this person. I want to be this person. I'm going to become this person. It's one of my favorite moments that we've had for Shallan so far, and it's crazy. Like, she's only 19, right? Like, growing so much and so fast. So the romance has started between Adolin and Shallan. Those two were so silly and so cute. Like, the moment they both walked into the room, they locked eyes, and she's like, oh my god, he's so handsome. Why am I already thinking that like we're gonna be together? And then Adolin's like, who is that? Locked onto her immediately, thought she was so beautiful. So giddy for these two. Also, it's even more funny because Shallan has red hair, which I've basically pieced together at this point that that's a common trait from Horn Eater, but it's considered like impure to the bloodline. And her and Adolin both share that in common because Adolin with his blonde hair with streaks of black running through it, and that's also considered impure. So they have a common thing where in society, people sort of frown upon them for being like impure and not perfect to their society. And then, as I learned in part 3, there is not going to be an agreement or some sort of peace that's going to happen between the Parshendi. So Dalinar is determined to go to the center of the Shattered Plains and battle it out, hopefully to the death, so he can end this whole strife between them. And I thought that was really interesting, specifically relating to Shallan, because Shallan believed in what Jasnah's research was, believed in her, wants to see this through, and is terrified, and she needs to go to the Shattered Plains. She thinks that maybe Jasnah believes that there's a door there to Urithiru, and it could be at the center. So I would like for maybe both those things to happen at the same time. I think that would be really cool. And then because Shallan has like sort of entered into this new world, she was really smart and put herself into a neutral household, which at first it was like, what are you doing? Why don't you stay with the Colins? But she does have more power and more freedom to get things done under Sabarial's household. And I love how neutral he is, and that he also takes care of his community. And I can't remember right now, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't go on runs in battle to get the chrysalis. I am curious though about what is going to happen when he's forced to take sides. Whose side is he going to take and why? Because we haven't fully understood why he's neutral. I do think he's very honorable. Obviously, he hasn't tried to hurt Shallan. He's agreed to her payment. He clearly is in love with the Dark Eyes and doesn't really care about that stuff. He also makes sure that everyone in his community is taken care of. He does farming. He did things to make sure it felt like a home since they were leaving their home. Zixil is really smart, and it definitely helps helps that he was trained to be this way, because he is literally asking all the right questions. And I'll be honest, I didn't really think about this too hard. I was definitely curious about what is going on with Szeth the Shin, since sort of what we saw in the first book, that he was sort of working for the King of Kharbraneth. We don't know if he's still working for them. I mean, obviously there's the people who tried to kill Jasnah. They didn't want her knowing, and now Szeth went after Dalinar. People really don't want the Knights Radiant to come back. They don't want the lost ancient city of Urithi to be discovered again. They're really trying to stop all this. Who is Szeth working for currently? What is their overall goal? Which I'm guessing is obviously the whole point of this series. But Zigzil seems to be the only one asking the right questions. Kind of, I guess, transitioned into the Kaladin Bridge 4 area, putting a puzzle together here. As I look at my notes, Syl is an honor friend. She said honor. He is dead, but he lives on in Men and in Syl. I'm so confused, because I think in the last video, is the Stormfather her god? But she says that Honor's dead as if it is some form of god, since she called him a he, and that he's dead, so he was able to be alive and sentient at some point. And then she also doesn't ever want Cal to get near a shard. And I'm wondering if this has to do with what happened when the Knights Radiant turned on their spren. But she also wants him to come into his power like a Knights Radiant, just without the shard and armor. So clearly there was a time when the Knights Radiant just fought with their spren and not with any of the shard plate or shard blade. And it's really interesting that when he finally does touch a shard blade, some really crazy stuff happens too, which we will get to. So Moash was sus. I was correct. I have so many mixed feelings about it, because now I'm like really mad at Elokar. Ugh. So we'll talk about that, because I guess I just was more concerned about Kaladin getting in trouble because Moash is his responsibility, but now I guess that doesn't really matter. Renarin is so sweet, and the fact that he wants to honor Adolin and his father, and he wants to try to be like a great warrior, but he knows he can't be at their level, and then he's not allowed to fight because of his epilepsy. And it was really cool that Kaladin like knew what it was, and he obviously understood it because his dad was a doctor. And I think he's so sweet, and just such an interesting balance between Adolin and Dalinar. I feel like if his mom was alive, he would probably reflect more of her. I'm just really excited to see his character grow specifically, and it's nice seeing this very vulnerable, more emotional character in this series. Not that Adolin and Dalinar aren't, but they are much more stoic and a little less vulnerable. I really like Renarin, and I think that it's important that we have him in the story. We are looping back around to Shallan. "It works," she whispered. This was more than changing scuffs in her dress or making herself look older as she'd done before. This was a complete transformation. What could we do with this? "Whatever we imagine," Pattern said from the wall nearby, "or whatever you can imagine. I am not good with what is not, but I like it. I like the taste of it." He seemed very pleased with himself at the comment. So this is like really cool, because we've seen her transform other things, but the fact that she's getting to do it to herself entirely and it's working is insane. I think this is kind of where I'm starting to see more of the magic breakdown, and I love that, because Shallan is an artist. It's being mixed in with her magic, which is really freaking cool. And it also kind of reminds me of, there's a spell in Dungeons & Dragons. Yes, I played Dungeons & Dragons, called Disguise Self, which, speaking of, if you like D&D and you like watching actual plays on YouTube, you can actually check out my other channel, Fables D20, that is run by my partner. We have a new series coming. It's Jaws inspired. I'm super excited. It's called Curse of Amity Island. I'll have the link in the description below if you want to check that out. So we're gonna dive back into Moash and why his situation is so complicated. And I think it actually really reflects the end that just happened. We know Moash's parents had shops, and Elokar had a friend that was like, "Oh, they're competing with me. You need to get rid of them." And they were essentially supposed to go on trial or whatever, and they just rotted in prison until they died, which is terrible. So now I'm like, if I was Moash, I would be a part of this secret group also trying to get rid of the king. Like, that's a terrible thing to do. Elokar is such a brat. I've seen Game of Thrones. I know Joffrey is a piece of work. He clearly was just spoiled and not told no and not given discipline or consequences when he acted out of character, because Jasnah may be like a little bit aggressive in her beliefs and stuff, but she's still respectful and she doesn't act like a child. Elokar is just out of control. And now, after what happens at the end of part 3 with Kaladin, and yes, I'm jumping straight to that. Kind of ironic and kind of insane. There's literally no reason for Kaladin to be in prison. I get that the thing with Sadeas is really freaking upsetting, but like, Dalinar's right, he is honorable, and Syl did keep telling him, you need to not let Amarin get to you. It's going to ruin you, and it does. But Elokar is not a good ruler. He cannot see through things straight. When he's upset and he wants something done a certain way, he just does it. That's not a good ruler. He doesn't look at all sides of the spectrum. It's so complicated, and I am so stressed. That's kind of why I didn't read the interlude yet, because I sort of wanted to sit in everything that happened with you guys before I let that kind of change my mood, which really does just go into this quote nicely, and I think is really interesting commentary that Sanderson put in. Is that justice? Syl asked. One form. There's a difference. What? Kaladin demanded, thrusting. Storm it. Why couldn't he make the stupid weapon go where it should? Because of what it does to you, Syl said softly. Thinking about him changes you, twists you. You're supposed to protect Kaladin, not kill. And I think it's really important because we have Elokar, who is just throwing fits and letting his emotions affect him and make horrible decisions. And when Kaladin is not focused on protecting and he's seeking out revenge, which is also what Moash is doing, which is why I have so many complicated feelings about it. I love morally gray characters. What can I say? It does change you. And so it is important to have this whole discussion of like, when you're on the battlefield fighting a war, it is a little bit different because you're protecting your country. But it also is important to question, are you actually protecting your country? What is the war? Why is it actually happening? Do go into that kind of battle. It does change you, but in a much different way. That's why I love revenge storylines, because it's like, is this going to make me feel better? Is this going to feel this hole inside of me? That is why Scarlet Witch's story and Doctor Strange's movie they had together is one of my favorites, because I am someone who has gone through grief and is, you know, still going through it. I don't think it really ever ends, but seeing Scarlet Witch go to that dark side and do her revenge and realize it didn't help her at all. But sometimes you need these stories, what are they called? Parables, you know, to see other people go through it and realize it doesn't actually change anything. It makes you potentially feel worse, but doesn't make you feel better. So having this commentary in this book is really interesting to discuss, and having Kaladin be a reflection of that. So I'm curious about what he's going to think about while he's in prison. Is he going to really reflect on that? I know that he's like, I'm done trusting Light Eyes. So we're going to need to see something happen with him to finally make a full switch, because before this, he still really didn't trust Light Eyes. He was trying to trust Dalinar, but now he's completely back over the edge. So I can't wait to see what the thing is that's going to finally get him over that. I think it was what Sahal said, was he like doesn't care about the light or dark eyes. And so I think Kaladin will probably come to a place of that, where he stops reflecting what your eye color tier is and just more judges you as you are as a person. There was a point in the book where Shen the Parshman was like, yo, I gotta talk to you. And then Kaladin had to go do something. And later on, he's like, I have to leave. I think the Parshendi called him, and now I'm even nervous because I talked about this before. Are the Parshendi slaves spying on them? What, is Shen gonna tell them things now that he's going back? I mean, we don't know. I'm assuming he's going back though, but weird timing. All right, the rock shenanigans have started. Kaladin is like, fine, I will finally go out to a bar with y'all. All these moments make me giggle. You can see this friend, Kaladin pressed, because of what happened to you in these waters. It is not part of story, Rock said, eyeing him. It is involved. I will say no more of this thing. What other secrets is Rock talking about, and why won't he tell them? And then like there's other times where Moash tries to correct him on something. So the gods, Moash said, nursing his own drink, were pleased that you solved problems on your own by going to other gods, begging them to help you instead. Hush, Rock said. Is good story and is truth. He's just like, no, you're telling it wrong. That's not what happened. And then he confirms again that Spren are gods for horn eaters, which is really interesting. And then Zigzil even tries to correct him on something. He's just like, you guys, you don't know. You're not horn eater. You lowlanders know nothing. Right after this is when Kaladin goes into like that secret meeting with Moash and the people that want to kill King Elokar. I do think that Dalinar should be on the throne, but I think he needs to get his shit together. He's very confused right now. I mean, he made Amarin head of the Knights Radiant, which is just insane to me, but he did it. So I need Dalinar to get his shit together for this to really, really work. Okay, here are some quotes that I loved from this section so far. A woman with a sword, an odd sight. Of course. Was it any odder than a dark-eyed man holding a shard blade? And right before that, Zahal says, even after all these years, it strikes me as silly. There's nothing holy about swords. They're better in situations worse than others. Taking away the power of any sword in general and saying like, sure, they're helpful sometimes, but it's not always the best weapon. So why do we put so much power over them in the first place, to the point that we think it's weird if a woman is holding one or a dark-eyed one is? So at the end of the day, it's just a weapon, but not the best weapon, and we don't need to put it on this such high praise. This quote was insane, and it's specifically an inner thought for Kaladin. Be the surgeon this kingdom needs. That is so heavy. Sanderson's almost trying to say like, Kaladin, you have the tools to help fix it. You need to operate. This kingdom is bleeding out on the table. They're falling apart. They have all these stabs and wounds everywhere. How are you going to fix it? But now he's in prison. I know we're jumping to the end and we haven't even finished, guys. I know. For this video, I stopped at chapter 47. I love Sanderson, you guys. I'm gonna get more into detail in the next video, but let's just say the poop joke ruined me. I was laughing so hard, and even more specifically, it's the fact that it's Shallan, who has been told by everyone in society that she should not behave in a certain way, she shouldn't speak out, she shouldn't have such wit or such crass humor. And then he gave her a scene to do such. And Adolin ate it up and loves this about her. And I'm also listening to the audiobook with this, guys. It kills me. Want to keep reading. I literally have 18 hours left. I could finish that in like 2 to 3 days, but we're on this journey together. As you guys always tell me in the Discord, journey before destination. I'm now gonna move on to the extended edition. Like I said before, if you are interested in that, it's the best way to support the channel for me. It's at the $5 tier, the storyteller level. You can go ahead and check out my Patreon down in the description below, and I will see you all in the next video for part, what am I gonna call this? This is the first half. You're going to get the second half of part 3 in the next video. Thank you all so much for your patience. You are amazing. See you in the next one.